There's something haunting about a man walking out of his home without his wallet, his keys, or even his phone. Something that doesn't sit right, as if he didn't plan on coming back. But what if he wasn't planning anything at all? In the early morning hours of a quiet day in Buford, Georgia, a young man left his home near Lake Lanier. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He wasn't dressed for a trip. And he was sick, too sick, some said, to even be out of bed. Weeks later, his body would be pulled from the cold, murky waters of Lake Lanier. No foul play, no clear cause, just silence. And in that silence, 1,000 questions. He was only 23 years old. His name hasn't been spoken on national broadcasts or documentary specials, but for those who knew him, he was kind, thoughtful, and deeply immersed in the things he loved: video games, music, and spending time with friends online. His life was simple, centered around his home in Buford, not far from the infamous Lake Lanier. A lake known not just for its beauty, but for its long, unsettling history of drownings, disappearances, and whispered superstitions. On the day he vanished, he wasn't well. He had been battling what appeared to be the flu, nothing life-threatening but enough to keep him homebound for a few days. He had spent the night before playing video games in his room. Friends said he seemed a bit off, but still responsive and engaged. There was no indication of anything out of the ordinary. No arguments, no cryptic messages, just a quiet night at home. But sometime before dawn, something changed. He left the house alone. No wallet, no phone, no keys, not even a jacket, though it was chilly outside. His car remained in the driveway. It's the kind of detail that seems small until you realize how unnatural it is. Most people, even when unwell, don't just walk away from their lives, especially not in the dark, especially not when there's no clear destination. His family noticed his absence later that morning. At first, they assumed he had stepped out for air, maybe a short walk. But when hours passed with no word and no sign of where he could have gone, concern grew quickly into fear. They searched the neighborhood, checked local stores, gas stations, anywhere he might have wandered. Eventually, they filed a missing persons report. Police began their investigation with limited leads. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. His room was undisturbed, his computer still on, his shoes were missing. But that was it. Surveillance footage from a gas station near Buford surfaced about a week into the search. In it, a man resembling him can be seen walking near the parking lot, wearing clothes similar to what his family believed he may have been wearing that night. But the footage was grainy and unclear. Investigators couldn't definitively confirm that it was him. It was the only potential sighting. After that, there was nothing. No bank activity, no social media use, no phone pings, just stillness. The search for him stretched on for nearly a month. Friends posted flyers, family members organized community efforts. But with every passing day, hope dimmed. Then, in early spring, a call came in. A body had been found in Lake Lanier. It had surfaced near a quiet, wooded section of the shoreline, difficult to access and far from where most people swim or boat. It was him. Authorities confirmed that there were no signs of foul play. There were no injuries, no substances in his system, and yet, no clear explanation. The cause of death was officially listed as undetermined. He hadn't drowned in the traditional sense. There was water in his lungs, yes, but not enough to confirm that he died by drowning. Nor was there evidence he had fallen or been pushed into the lake. He was just there. The lake had taken him, quietly and without reason. And for those left behind, that absence of reason became its own kind of torment. His family struggled with the unanswered questions. What could have drawn him to the lake that night? Why would he walk over a mile without shoes, phone, or wallet? Why, while sick with the flu, would he head alone toward a body of water in the dark? There was no history of mental illness, no signs of distress or depression. Nothing in his behavior in the days prior had suggested he was in trouble or planning something. In fact, everything pointed in the opposite direction. He had plans. He had routines. And he was engaged in them right up until the moment he vanished. Lake Lanier, for all its beauty, has long been a magnet for mystery. Since its creation in the 1950s, over 200 people have lost their lives there. Some locals believe the lake is cursed. Built over the ruins of once thriving communities, including a predominantly black town named Oscarville, which was displaced during the lake's construction. Stories of unsettled spirits, Strange currents and unexplained drownings have followed the lake for decades. To be clear, there is no proof that something supernatural occurred here. But when a young man, unwell and unprepared, disappears into the night only to be found lifeless in a lake with no cause of death, the mind begins to reach for answers. Any answers. Maybe it was a tragic accident. Maybe disorientation led him there. Maybe illness clouded his judgment. Or maybe, just maybe, there's something about that lake we still don't fully understand. Whatever the truth, his story serves as a quiet reminder of how fragile the line is between the known and the unknown, between the familiar comfort of home and the dark pull of places that don't offer answers. He was not a headline. He was not a mystery to be solved for entertainment. He was a son, a brother, a friend. And in the absence of clarity, we owe him, and those like him, something far deeper than theories. We owe them remembrance. Some stories don't end with a twist or a resolution. Some just fade, like a ripple in dark water. And maybe that's the most unsettling part of all, because we like to believe that every mystery has a solution, but sometimes the truth remains just out of reach, waiting quietly beneath the surface. She told the world she was scared, that someone was following her, that she didn't feel safe anymore. And then she vanished. 16-year-old Hannah Truelove left behind more than just questions. She left behind digital echoes, posts that hinted at fear, isolation, and something or someone closing in. Within 24 hours, her body would be discovered near the shoreline of Lake Lanier, and a decade later, her killer has never been caught. This is the story of a young girl who saw something coming, but no one knows what. Hannah was just 16 years old when her life was taken. She lived with her mother in an apartment complex in Gainesville, Georgia, only a short walk from the water's edge of Lake Lanier. She was a high school student, navigating the everyday mix of classes, friendships, and teenage uncertainty. Like many her age, she shared pieces of herself online. But unlike most, her final posts carried the weight of something darker. On Twitter, she posted short, tense updates, small signals that something wasn't right. One tweet read, "I need to move out of these apartments." Another said simply, "I'm scared." A few even mentioned being watched or followed. At the time, it was easy to miss or dismiss. Teenagers sometimes post dramatic things. Sometimes fear is fleeting. But looking back, those tweets now feel chilling, like a warning. One no one could fully understand until it was too late. August 23rd, 2012, began like any other summer day. Hannah was seen in the apartment complex during the afternoon and early evening. Neighbors remembered her walking alone outside, possibly waiting for someone. As the sun began to set, she didn't return home. Her mother grew concerned, but in those first few hours, there was still hope. Maybe she was with a friend, maybe her phone had died. But when night came, and she still hadn't checked in, that hope turned quickly into fear. By morning, she was officially reported missing. The search began immediately. Family, friends, and law enforcement combed through the nearby woods, trails, and the lake's edge. Helicopters scanned the area from above. Volunteers walked through the trees. And then, just one day after she was last seen, they found her. Hannah's body was discovered in a wooded area just yards from the apartment complex, near the shoreline of Lake Lanier. It was hidden from view, tucked into a spot that suggested someone didn't want her to be found. The moment rescue crews confirmed her identity, the case shifted from a missing person to a homicide. But the mystery was just beginning. Police never released full details about the condition in which Hannah was found, citing the ongoing nature of the investigation. What they did confirm was this: she had been murdered. There were no signs of sexual assault, no obvious indication of robbery, no witnesses who came forward with credible sightings. Whoever had done this, if they had followed her as she feared, left behind almost nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA, no traceable evidence, and no known motive. Investigators canvassed the complex and surrounding areas. They questioned neighbors, classmates, and anyone who had contact with Hannah in those final days. Some said she had been dealing with tension at school. Others speculated about an older boy she may have known. But none of it led anywhere. No suspect was ever named publicly. Her tweets gained renewed attention. Was she being stalked? Had she confided in someone about a specific threat? Had someone online taken too much interest in her? The apartment complex bordered Lake Lanier, a place with a long and eerie history. Locals have long associated the lake with strange accidents, sudden drownings, and disappearances. Over the years, more than 200 people have died in or around its waters. Some believe it's cursed. Some say it's just coincidence. Either way, the presence of that lake, the silence of it, hung heavy over Hannah's case. As months passed, investigators explored every theory. They interviewed dozens of people. They followed leads across state lines. But no arrest was made, no confession, no resolution. What remained were Hannah's tweets, brief messages written in her own voice, now frozen in time. And they weren't imagined. Whatever she feared was real. Her mother has never stopped seeking answers. Every year, she marks the anniversary of Hannah's death. She has spoken publicly, asking anyone who might have information, no matter how small, to come forward. Her message has always been the same: someone knows something. Forensic experts revisited the case in the years that followed. The FBI and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation joined efforts to reanalyze evidence, hoping new technology might reveal what the initial investigation couldn't. But as of today, Hannah's killer has never been identified. It's a haunting gap in justice. A child lost. A family left without answers. And a community still carrying the weight of what was taken. If there's one thing that continues to echo through this case, it's those early warnings. Hannah didn't just vanish. She knew something wasn't right. She felt it. She shared it. And she wasn't believed. At least, not in time. There's a quiet lesson here, one that doesn't come with easy closure. When someone says they feel unsafe, it matters. When a young person shares fear, even in passing, even online, it deserves to be heard and understood. Hannah Truelove's story isn't just about a crime. It's about something much deeper. It's about the shadows that sometimes fall close to home, about how danger doesn't always look like danger until it's too late, and about how silence can be its own kind of violence, especially when justice remains just out of reach. Lake Lanier has swallowed many secrets over the years. Hannah's life should not be one of them. If you know anything about what happened to her, even the smallest detail, her family and the investigators are still listening. And if nothing else, let this serve as a solemn reminder. When someone says they're scared, we must take the time to truly listen, because sometimes those quiet signals are the only warning we'll ever get. It was supposed to be a joyful day on the water, bright skies, warm sun, and the laughter of friends echoing across the lake. A celebration of life, of friendship, of one more year around the sun. But by the end of that day, the mood had shifted. The smiles had vanished, and one young man, just 27 years old, was gone without a trace beneath the still waters of Lake Lanier. His name was Ramon Diaz-Soria. He wasn't a celebrity. He didn't make headlines before that day. But in a matter of hours, his name would be spoken by people across the country, not for what he did, but for the haunting mystery of what happened to him. Lake Lanier in northern Georgia is often described as beautiful, even serene, but it also carries a reputation for tragedy. Over the years, the lake has quietly claimed hundreds of lives, becoming one of the most talked about bodies of water in the South. And for those who know its history, there's an unease that lingers just below the surface. On June 15, 2025, Ramon was one of several people on a pontoon boat celebrating a friend's birthday. The atmosphere was light. Music played. The group had anchored in a calm area of the lake, about 40 miles northeast of Atlanta. At some point during the gathering, Ramon, like others before him, decided to jump into the water. Witnesses say he was wearing a life jacket, but something about how it fit or didn't fit was off. It wasn't fully secured. And before anyone realized what was happening, Ramon began to struggle. Within seconds, he went under. At first, there was confusion. It didn't seem possible. The water was calm. It was broad daylight. But Ramon didn't resurface. Friends called out to him. Some dove in after him. But he was gone. The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office was alerted, and emergency crews responded quickly. Divers were dispatched. Sonar technology was brought in. The area where he had vanished, about 60 feet deep, was thoroughly scanned. For over 24 hours, they searched, and still nothing. By the following morning, worry had turned to dread. His life jacket, found floating separately, was the only sign he'd ever been there. It wasn't until late Sunday evening, nearly 2 full days after he disappeared, that search crews finally located Ramon's body. It was submerged in deep water not far from where he had gone under. Authorities ruled it an accidental drowning. There were no signs of foul play. But for those who knew Ramon and for those who followed the story, the details raised difficult questions. Ramon couldn't swim. That alone made his decision to enter the water puzzling. Why would someone who feared the water take that risk? Some speculated that he didn't plan to go far, that he trusted the life jacket to keep him safe. Others wondered if he felt pressured to join in, caught up in the energy of the moment. We may never know. What we do know is that something went terribly wrong in just a matter of seconds. And for those who were there, his friends, his family, the trauma of that moment will never fully fade. Ramon's story is heartbreaking, but it is not unique, not on Lake Lanier. The lake, built in the 1950s by flooding several communities and farmlands, has become infamous over time for its growing number of drownings and boating accidents. Some say it's cursed. Others say it's simply a result of design flaws, underwater debris, and unpredictable depths. Whatever the cause, what's undeniable is the sheer number of lives the lake has taken. Over 200 people have drowned there in the past 3 decades. And for some families like Ramon's, that statistic is now deeply personal. In the wake of his death, many have asked the same question. How can a lake that looks so peaceful be so dangerous? Part of the answer lies in the landscape itself. Beneath the surface of Lake Lanier lies a maze of submerged structures, remnants of towns that were never fully cleared before the reservoir was filled. Old roads, trees, even buildings rest under the waterline. These hidden hazards can disorient swimmers and interfere with rescue efforts. But perhaps the larger danger is perception. Many people underestimate the risks. They see the lake as a playground, wide open, inviting. They don't realize how quickly the water can turn against them. Even experienced swimmers have struggled in its depths. Ramon's case is a devastating reminder that the lake's calm surface can hide a deadly current. That even with friends nearby, even on a happy day, even with a life jacket, things can still go wrong. His story has prompted new conversations about lake safety. Officials continue to urge visitors to wear properly fitted flotation devices and to never underestimate their surroundings. But for Ramon's family, no safety campaign can undo what happened that day. They remember him as a kind-hearted, soft-spoken man, someone who cared deeply for those around him, someone who had plans, hopes for the future, and above all, someone who should still be here. There's a heaviness to this kind of loss. It's not just the tragedy itself, but the suddenness. One moment, you're taking photos, laughing with friends, feeling the breeze off the water, and the next, there's a hole where someone used to be. It's the kind of grief that doesn't come with clear answers, just an ache that lingers. If you've made it this far, I'd ask you to pause for a moment, not just for Ramon, but for all the lives lost in places we assume are safe. The beaches, the lakes, the hiking trails. These places remind us that even in the most beautiful corners of the world, caution and care are never optional. Sometimes the danger isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It waits, quiet, until it's too late. Ramon Diaz-Soria's life mattered, and though his final moments were brief, the ripple effect of his story continues to spread, reminding us all to hold tight to those we love and never take a moment for granted.